What's going on, everybody? We are back here on a lovely Thursday night, and it is 420, baby. Let's cheese up, shall we? Bang, bang. There we go. Hit the wrong button. Bang. Here we go. And it is the Draft NFL show. I am Guns Picks, the host with the most point guard of podcasting, and I am here joined with me tonight. The NFL draft guru, he does so much prep on this stuff. I made sure that he had to be on this show. His second appearance on the DadBodds podcast. It is Luke, aka at Vegas Refund. You can also check him out on Twitter for that. And also he has a great draft prep Google sheet that you can get on his site for a low price of $35 on VegasRefund.com. It is the Vegas Refund. What's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's popping? Let's get into this. So, I think the last time I was on, it was like the start of the NFL season.
Mm-hmm. It was a good time, man. I mean, and it was a great interview. You shared a lot with us, but if you want to go check that out, it is on our Sports Wagering Network YouTube. You can go see the initial interview with Luke, but we're not here to bellyache around with the interviews on this one. I always want to start this off right. So when we talk about NFL draft and day one, what is your preparation process to get from I guess would be the end of the football season to now? I mean, do you start your prep at the end of the football season, or do you start end of college football? I mean, how do you get everything prepped for getting the right numbers?
I would say like late January is when I start thinking about it. And I have a couple of buddies on Twitter that start sending me like mock drafts in January. I tell them to hold off because I'm just not ready for that. Because when I do dive in, it is consuming, and my wife really isn't happy. But we're getting close to the breaking point for her. But usually, like right after the Super Bowl, is when I start, and then like my Google Doc is kind of the foundation for everything for me, and I don't start filling that out until probably like end of February.
Yeah,
which is like early,
which is way early, and that's something to tell the people about. Is the best time to get the right numbers is right around the end of the NFL season, right after the Super Bowl. It's like you'll start seeing the props for a lot of these guys that are saying, I'm going to be in the draft, foregoing senior years or leaving early or just graduating all in general. But I've already seen your sheet, and it was kind of interesting, like looking at everything. I mean, what is the stuff that you look for in creating something as elaborate as what you provide on your website?
Yeah, so it's really, I kind of just take all the information we have at our, like the mock drafts, which is one of the most like clickable products that exists, that every site is just pumping out mock drafts. So basically just taking those and kind of turning them into a power rating. So if you're capping an NFL game and you have a rating on a game, it's no different than taking the mock drafts and creating a power rating for each player, where it's called an EDP. So it's an estimated draft position. So if one player is a 10.5 over under and his EDP is 13 point whatever, like that's 3 points of edge technically you have, where there's a bunch of other things you have to look into, where how many spots, like in the trends, where like right now for me, like the EDP is important. The pick EDP is the most important. So basically like their ranking in terms of where their EDP falls, where if you have 10 guys and the highest EDP is the 10th ranked player. But kind of finding trends, and you can kind of see, if you look at it as much as me, where if these players are falling and rising, and kind of getting ahead of it, because I'm tracking like 40 right now.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. You basically like kind of took maybe 25, 30 players that I saw at least on the sheet. And what's great about your sheet is like you can not only see what the over and under is from the start to now, and then you can see what every other book has, and you also have your estimated draft position, your EDP, as you say, um, which kind of gives you an idea of maybe the probability of a certain player getting picked at this position versus what the book's odds are at that
Yeah, and I
over and under.
think the odds have come out a lot slower this year,
Yeah,
and generally speaking, a lot better too. Where I want to say draft props started coming out like 2 years ago, maybe three, and there were some really bad lines. Like they were just kind of setting numbers. They might have looked at like one mock, probably Daniel Jeremiah, and setting over under based off of that. And this year, it does seem like they've gotten better at this. I still think they suck at this, but uh, a lot of the numbers that they're setting are in the ranges that my sheet has, which like Caesars just popped, I want to say like 4 over unders, and all of them were pretty much aligned to what I wanted. And a lot of them were like sitting on the one spot that is like the key number for that player. So if there's like a key number for like 7 is a key number in a football game, um, like JSN's key number would be like 12
right.
because he's being mocked the highest percentage to that. So it's somewhat disappointing, but they move a ton. They're very sensitive. So if the openers don't intrigue you, getting on one side of a key number for a mock draft, it can happen. Where like Miles Murphy was one I was looking at, and that opened at 19.5 and immediately moved to 18.5, which his over to under actually flipped in terms of the percentages. Where right now, if you look at the sheet, it's screaming an overplay. But that's also someone that I have a gut feeling that he's going to go a lot earlier than I think what the media's expectation is for him, because he's been a faller the entire mock draft season. So you can't just take the sheet and just bet blindly off of it. You still have to have like an opinion that isn't personal, but a feel. You still have to have a feel for everything and knowing what guys have upside and not just buying into the mock drafts blindly. Because out of all the years, this would be the year you don't do that because of the chaos. Like the uncertainty is at all-time highs, where guys can go higher, guys can go lower based off the mocks, and everyone can just be wrong, which is okay. But that's just another reason why you just don't want to like bet off of it blindly.
Yeah, and before we actually go into the nuts and bolts and like really breaking down a lot of these players from positional standpoints and props and at Vegas Refund, if you want to go check out his sheet, there's a link in his bio. It's $35. I mean, if you're going to be putting a lot of props on this one, it is a very useful tool to have. And before we get into that, I always like what the draft has done as of late. Probably since 2017 is having not having Roger Goodell do every single pick. You always have the second and the third round kind of done by either somebody that has played for the team before or just maybe a fan or something like that. I did pull up actually Pun's gonna pull this up here. I want to pull out these three because as a closeted wrestling fan, I always love the heel moves when it comes to having these pickers come out there and really antagonize the crowd. There's three actually best ofs that I want to bring up here. I just want to play it for the crew. If we can fast forward this just a little bit, Pun, there's a little Mahomes highlight reel, but right to the first pick. I think it's like 10, maybe 20 seconds in on that clip. So basically what you have is like, you have examples of what I love is rivalries. So, if you're playing in if the draft's in Dallas, and this one is a perfect position here. So you have a Eagles player announcing an Eagles pick in Dallas, and his reaction is perfect. Go ahead and roll it.
I need to watch this clip myself.
No sound, Pun. There's no sound, Pun. We all right. So maybe I can narrate this one a little bit. I'm going on this one. So basically, you have I can't remember who the Eagles player was, but he went. This is in 2018. It's at the draft. It's in Dallas, and he's basically saying like you're drafting kids that weren't even born the last time Dallas won the Super Bowl, and of course, this is after the Eagles won the championship. We probably should have tested this out beforehand, but for some reason, the sound isn't working on this one.
Let's try this.
Okay.
Maybe I need to be on the stream. Let's try it.
Yeah.
Before it would work. Let's try it.
Yep. And,
anything?
Yeah, nothing. I'm hearing nothing.
Let's bail on this video.
Yeah, let's bail. All right, we try here on.
It's all good.
I don't know why that won't work.
Yeah. Usually we've done clips on here before, and for some reason it's not working today.
And I'm not on mute. We're good. All right. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's all good. So before we actually get into the picks, before we actually get into everything that is the draft, we got to give a proper salute to our sponsor. I'm drinking one right now here. It is Viva Tequila Seltzers. Roll up on
365 days of hard work. And it all comes down. Guys, we've waited a year for this, and you're already drinking?
Ryan, this is a charity scramble. We're here for the Vivas.
Viva Tequila Seltzer. Only 88 calories. 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and gluten-free. Ditch the malt. Add tequila.
Good job, boys. One for you. One for you.
Wow, that is it for our sponsor. That comes from the Super Bowl. All right, let's get into the picks. Let's talk. I want to start this off from the top of the list here. I think everything that has been indicated. It looks like Bryce Young is going to be the first pick of the draft, quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And then there's a little bit of a shakeup here on what's going to be going on in the second pick here. I mean, do you think Will Anderson is going to move up? You have CJ Stroud in there, and of course, a lot of scuttlebugs and talks about Will Levis. I know you've done a lot of research on the second and third pick of the draft. I guess I'll combine these into both. What are your thoughts on the next two picks for this year's draft?
So I want to say, like, probably out of everything, the uncertainty is at an all-time high, but the one thing probably the most confident on is that it's not going to be CJ Stroud at number 2, which leaves us with two options, either Will Levis or one of the two defensive linemen, Anderson or Wilson, which there are very strong rumors. There have been very strong rumors about the Colts basically being in on Levis at 4. And then you also hear that the Texans like Levis as well. So if the Texans don't take him, Levis isn't going to get past 4. And ironically today, Jeremiah had a bunch of comments that kind of reassured that on a podcast with Schrager, and then he had a call somewhere else that kind of confirmed it as well. And Levis over-unders got pulled everywhere today. Like, the unders were at 6.5. Severely juiced was like minus 250, minus 300. And today they just took them off, which usually when books just take something like that off, it's I'm not saying they're confirming it, but it's getting bet enough that they just don't want any part of it. And I don't want to say that confirms it, but it is Will Levis under bettors a good feeling. Right now, for me, I mean, there's two scenarios. If Levis goes second, the top 10 looks totally different from if one of the defensive linemen goes second. Gun to head right now, no pun intended for this show, I would probably lean. If I'm making a mock draft, I'm probably putting. God, it's so hard. I'm putting either Levis or Tyree. I would probably put Levis just because I'm going to make more money if Levis goes too. But from there, as of right now, CJ Stroud might be in a total free fall. It seems like more narratives that are negatively portraying him are coming to fruition every single day, where he was the consensus number 1 pick 2 weeks ago. And now he's being mocked to follow the Raiders at 7. McShay was on a podcast with Russillo today. It was Jeremiah, Russillo, and McShay was saying that from what he's hearing, that the Raiders are very interested in Stroud, whether he falls or they trade up. Which the number 3 spot is like probably the most prime trade spot that I can remember ever. There were times that experts were giving it a 99% chance that the Cardinals were going to trade out of number 3. So to me, they have Jimmy G, and you thought that they were out of quarterback, but then McShay comes out saying that the Raiders would have interest in Stroud, which is probably coming out because it's coming out that he might fall.
Right.
Which I would probably put the Raiders trading to 3 as a prime candidate to trade, which you would go Bryce, Levis, Stroud, probably AR, which would be 4 quarterbacks in a row, or it would go Bryce, Tyree Wilson, Stroud, Levis, I think.
You hear it here first from the Vegas Refund. Here, you go check them out on Twitter. But, the thing about like I understand the upside for Young. I understand the upside for Stroud. Will Levis is one of those guys that I just feel like he's putting himself in a physical position where he's not going to be a good quarterback because he's focusing a little bit more on building his body up to handle the wears and tears of the NFL. If you've seen his his Instagram or anything like that with his mirror photos from his gym workouts, and less on trying to get himself in a position to study playbook. Also, the same thing with Anthony Richardson. I don't know why there is such a big upside with him. Seeing him as a guy that watches a lot of college football, what is the upside for Anthony Richardson other than he is just a tremendous athlete that can throw the ball 60 yards? How is he any different than a Jamarcus Russell type of player?
I mean, the keyword that you just use is the upside. I mean, he's being drafted for his upside. He's not being drafted based off of what he did in college. He's being drafted based off of like a very small sample size of ridiculous plays that he is one of very few people on this planet that could probably make. Where if you look at anyone's rankings, he's 20s, 30s, but you're drafting him because you think he has the potential to be the number 1 ranked player. For me, like the Colts have never made sense because he's never made sense at 1 either because it's assumed that he's not going to be able to start day 1. And he does need somewhat of a bridge quarterback. And I can't remember a number 1 pick that hasn't started day 1. But like teams like not the Colts. So teams like the Raiders, Seahawks, Lions, Titans, who have like the bridge quarterbacks like Jimmy G, Tannehill, Geno, I guess it could be argued maybe Goff, or where like AR fits for me. And then like Levis and Stroud fit for teams like that need immediate starters, like the Colts and the Texans. And this is definitely a quarterback class that creates a lot of personal opinions because it is not a great quarterback class, but the supply isn't meeting the demand, and the demand is yanking these guys that probably wouldn't be top 5 picks in other drafts to spots that to get $20 million, which is crazy, which would be great. And the personal opinions do come into play because each one has so many negative narratives that it's tough not to have an opinion on someone like Levis and posting those Instagram videos, but he's also the only guy coming from a pro system. There are a lot of connections to the Colts where I think I saw like CJ Stroud, like it had almost, he had like an absolute insane amount of plays under center, like not a lot. In his college career, where Levis had a ton under center. So there's like those types of intricacies. But yeah, it's a unique class that things like Will Levis could go number 2. I mean, I was doing a podcast with Whale Capper, Drew Dinsick earlier, and he was even pitching the Patriots trading Mac Jones to number 2 today, which I was not expecting. But when he explained it, it made sense. I mean, I still can't get over that one.
As a Patriots fan, you hear these rumors that are going around the camp, especially with Mac Jones. You got Bill O'Brien being the offensive coordinator there now, bringing back the team together, the band back together, as they say, with Bill Belichick and O'Brien. Do you think there's a little bit of animosity? I know maybe Bill Belichick's not really happy with the performance of Jones going into his third year. Do you think trading him will get them enough value to get up to that certain point? Because he really hasn't proved anything to me as a fan that
I think it has, in what Drew explained, I think it has a lot more to do with just a broken relationship between him and Belichick, if this is true, where he was telling the story, and Drew's one of like the more connected people I know, like by far, that Mac Jones made a call to Alabama midseason last year, basically like crying, saying he needs help. It's like hell here. And then of course Saban's boys with Belichick, and Belichick found out that calling, and then everything kind of went off the rails, where you see him yelling at the coaches on the sideline, and it just feels like more of a broken relationship. If something does happen, a broken relationship feels like the reason. But you also see the rumors that Cesario might be out of Houston after the draft, which everyone wonders why a GM would be out after the draft, because it's difficult to get rid of a GM before the draft who takes his entire scouting department with him, where you would have no one. And the rumors are Cesario maybe leaving and going back to the Patriots, which trading Mac Jones to the Texans and Cesario drafting the guy that would be the future quarterback for the team that he might be going to after, would be insane. Would be like the all-time chess move. But
yeah. That's the thing with the Patriots. You never know what they're going to do in the draft. It's impossible to even project. They're not transparent as far as their moves go. It's just a matter of I honestly think they make decisions as far as, if they're 2 picks away and they've already taken if the players that they want or the player that they want has been taken, they decide, we got to trade this pick down. That's kind of what the Patriots have already done. It's like, if we can get this player here, we'll get him. If not, we're just going to go trade the pick. We'll see how it happens. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting draft, maybe a very trade-heavy draft, which could make things interesting. But I want to call out a couple of guys in the chat. Michael joining us as always. Belena, he also agrees with me with Richardson. Says Richardson is garbage. I know is like, and he says, I know you watch. I watch a lot of Florida football. He had one good game all season against Utah, and that's kind of been the staple. And I know there was a big coaching change in the program that kind of probably restricted him a little bit, because they were a little bit more of an RPO type of run type of offense, which could have limited him. I just don't know about this kid at all. I personally think that, like, if the mock drafts or any of the analysts are really touting this guy, kind of, to me, as a natural contrarian, it just tells me that this guy's going to drop and maybe end up like Lamar Jackson from 4 or 5 years ago and drop later in the draft. That's just my opinion. I don't know if your positioning says that this guy's going to go as early as maybe Colts, but we'll see how it goes.
It's just betting on the draft. Like, don't have an opinion. Like, if you're betting into the draft, your job is to figure out what their opinion is, not your own. Which I totally get where both of you are coming from, which is exactly Exhibit A of the class that we have that I was explaining. But if he does it, doesn't matter,
right,
if he shouldn't go top 5. Like, if he is, then he is.
Yeah, like it. It's like we just got to see. As I lose my notes, I want to talk about this one. And it was kind of weird when I was actually looking just at, I was studying all the mock drafts. At least in the top 10, 1 or 2 guys, offensive line, the draft. Not seeing much. A lot of these guys from Northwestern. That everybody's talking about, that is probably going to be the first offensive lineman in the draft. What are your thoughts? Like, who's going to come out of the draft this year's draft?
You just broke up that entire segment.
Did I lose you? Yeah, no, hold on. My connection is all screwed up here. I'm trying to it goes back to my laptop. I apologize. Am I still
Bijan.
breaking up?
No, you're good now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So no, I was going back to off linemen. Usually you see a couple of those guys like going like really early in the draft. This year it seems like there's going to be a little bit of drop off. Maybe the first offensive lineman not taken not until like after the top 10. I was like, I know there's a guy from Northwestern, a guy from Ohio State. What are your thoughts on the first offensive lineman taken in the draft? Is it looks at that one?
So that's probably one of the few like first position markets that's still like up in the air that there might be value that exists. A lot of the guys have been bet down where starting in like February, it felt like there was like a new tweet coming out every week or day, excuse me, Jesus, that Jeremiah or someone was saying, don't be surprised if this guy goes first, which I think the first one was Broderick, which his odds got crushed. Darnell had a tweet, his odds got crushed, and they kind of went back up. And Darnell writes odds got crushed yesterday. There were some rumors that Darnell might be a trendy pick to the Bears at 9, which offensive linemen start at the Raiders. So there's Raiders at 7, and then you have a really dark horse with the Falcons at 8. So I'm not going to count them, but don't be shocked. And then it's Bears, Eagles, Titans, Jets, maybe Patriots, maybe Washington, maybe Steelers. So like between like 10 and 20, there is going to be a run of tackles. So it might start out slow, but once the first one goes, there's definitely going to be a domino where Paris Johnson's the favorite. Which I was on board with, and I think Skronsky, I think they should be dead even. Skronsky is like head over heels the best prospect, but a lot of people consider him a guard, and that's a negative. And that it's like the premium position argument of guards not being able to go as high as tackles, like running backs and tight ends. But I would say it's probably either Skronsky or Paris are the two chalk, which is fair. But Darnell is probably the dark horse that has a reasonable chance in terms of winning. Charlie Campbell and Walter Chapensky, two of like Charlie specifically. There's like a Mount Rushmore of mock drafters. He's on it. And he's been connected to the Raiders. Have no idea how. He's had Paris Johnson to the Raiders at number 7 for weeks. And it would make sense for the Raiders if they don't take Stroud, I guess. But Paris Johnson's under got destroyed yesterday, and I was totally shocked. Like it went from 10.5, which is pretty much a dead number, to 9.5, and there was no info. I didn't see any groups or discords that bet it that I know of, and the only connection I can make is the Raiders because I think the Bears would go Skronsky or Darnell over, even though Darnell kind of got destroyed by Bob McGill today, who's like the GOAT evaluator. But yeah, O-line's wide open. I wouldn't be shocked if any of them went first at this point.
Yeah, you would think that the Bears are probably going to go offensive lineman. I would think. I mean, they got to protect their investment. And
yeah, it's
not
the caveat good. Is if Jalen Carter falls to 9, that's when O-line becomes dicey. Right. Where to me, I think Jalen Carter is the only one that could really throw them off, like their plan of going O-line. Where if he falls, I think they'll take him. And then, yeah, Jalen Carter's the landmine in the top 10 that no one really has any clue where he's going to go. If he didn't have the character issues, he'd go top 5 easy. But when character issues come into play, like his, and it is someone as talented as he, where his issues would throw most players out of the first round. Right. But someone as talented as him is going to the top 10. And it's just something you can't measure. You don't know team by team how like their principles on this type of thing. And you just don't know where he goes, and where he goes affects the top 10 greatly. Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong with drafted Georgia talent. I mean, that's just a given. I mean, Jalen Carter is elite as they come. Tyree Wilson is kind of interesting as well. It's like I see him moving up a lot on the board. I know he was a great weapon at Texas Tech, but is there any upside with him? Do you think he gets drafted? I mean, I see a lot of the mock drafts having him drafted over Carter. Is there any value in him as a better to take them? I think I saw some value with him at over. I think the over and under on him was what, 6.5, 7.
Yeah, it's just the under. Like I think to me, it's either him or Levis going number 2 if the Texans don't trade. So like Anderson's been the chalk, deservingly so, for probably a year now. He's just rock solid, but the experts that you like respect, like Zerline, who's very connected to the Texans, has had Tyree Wilson over Anderson, and to the point that he's even admitted it that like he thinks Tyree is going to go 2 over Anderson if the Texans stay there. I mean, even though and he's someone who values his rankings a lot, and he has Anderson ranked higher, and then which Tyree hasn't tested, which is the problem. Which I think he's having like a personal pro day. I don't know if he already had it. I feel like he would have known, but he's been injured. He checked out medically, which kind of his stock has like gone way up and then it came down and now it's coming way back up. And I think people are enamored with Tyree because his ceiling is way higher than Anderson's, but Anderson's floor is way higher. So I think both of them.
He's like more of a leader. I think he has the talent and he has the leadership ability, which is like a little bit more of, if Bill Belichick always likes those Bama guys. Like he's gotten a lot of his middle linebackers have come from the SEC. It's like I always thought like Will Anderson was more of a leadership role, whereas Tyree Wilson is probably just sheer talent, and he just like edge rusher, gonna put pressure on the quarterback. I'm gonna beat the tackle. That thing where Will Anderson probably can study a little bit more on the offensive perspective and give reads and communicate to the other defenders. That's just my opinion. I want to bring up a comment in the chat here. Michael brought up a good one about Bijan. It's like, what are your thoughts on Bijan Robinson? It seems like the running back bunch is a little bit weak this year as far as like first round talent is concerned. Maybe it's just because of the transition of the game. He seems like going to be the first one off the board. Where do you think this guy lands? Is he top 10 material or is he going to drop even further?
He's probably like the best. He's probably the best back to come out since Saquon. Like there's an argument to be made that he might be better. Whereas over-under was, I think it opened at 16.5. It came down to 15.5, which FanDuel opened him yesterday at 12.5. Where at 16.5, like to me, like I didn't bet it because you just have no idea where he's going to go. But like I would never bet. Like since day one, I told myself I would not bet the Bijan over. Even though like all the stars align, you can't put him. You don't know where to put him. His position, being a running back, but he's just too good in a weaker class where the top end talent is going to fall off quicker. Teams could default to just the best, like Bijan, who is just screaming at everyone, where you have a bunch of mediocre guys relative to other drafts and you have Bijan. I do think him going to like a team that is win now mode is important. The trendy teams are Lions, Eagles, Washington, and maybe Packers, I guess you could say. But there's a bunch of stuff on him going to the Eagles today. I think Bijan had a conference call in the NFL Network, and he said like he's known the Eagles for a while and he wouldn't be shocked. Every beat reporter you read for the Eagles says like no way, like how he doesn't do this. But Bijan might be the exception. Yeah, I mean, I think he goes top 10. If I was betting into a Bijan market, I would just take his top 10 odds instead of laying the deuce, or maybe like an under 12.5, I guess you could say. I think that's plus money because on FanDuel, because FanDuel is like 12.5 and the under is like, I want to say like plus 150, which on paper, that 11 and 12 spot feels like a dead zone because of the Titans going O-line and the Texans probably either trading that pick or going D-line or maybe wide receiver, but 11 and 12 are prime trade-in spots with 7 and 8. Because if guys start to fall, like if AR falls or Stroud falls, the guys that are favored for the Raiders and the Falcons to take it 7 and 8, they are very likely to be able to get as well at 11 and 12. And it would just make too much sense for them to trade back a couple picks and then get the same guy and add picks that they would have already taken at 7 and 8, which that would be another 11 and 12 would be a sweet spot for Bijan as well. Falcons are favored too. I think all like the a lot of people I respect are mocking him to the Falcons. I'm like very 50-50 on that being realistic, but no, he's like broken standard deviation. Like measuring like how volatile someone is for the mock drafts. Like I think out of like the 40 mock drafts I track, like every single team in the first has him mocked somewhere, which is insane.
Picks from Dave in the chat. He's been on DadBodds before. He made a good point. Taking a running back in the top 10. Yeah, I agree with you on that one because guess what? Is like there was a coach. I can't remember who said it. It might have been maybe from the 90s. He's like, when a running back gets injured, you just open another pack of running backs. It's like because you just all you need is like 3 or 4 guys in there to kind of like it becomes a more situational role rather than an intricate role as building a team. But then you have a Saquon Barkley. You have maybe this Bijan Robinson. He's versatile not only in the running game but also in the passing game. And if you can run both of those roles and you have a player that can play all 16, 17 games, that's going to be very important.
The issue with Saquon was the Giants weren't good at the time that they drafted him. So like the prime years of Saquon, assuming he didn't get hurt on his rookie contract, were basically wasted. Where like right now, I don't think he signed his franchise tag yet, which like the Giants are finally competitive again. And he is 26, 27, I don't even know, where they're finally competitive and he's already up for a new contract. Or if you're a winning team, like let's say the Eagles, and you take Bijan, who I think is better than Saquon, like he's just the best we've had in like the last decade. Like the Eagles are just one of the Super Bowl. Like they can fully leverage him at running back, unlike someone like the Giants taking Saquon, while also they have 2 first-round picks. So like the Lions and the Eagles are the favorites because they have 2 first-round picks, which it's way less of a waste on assets when you have another one to take a premium position and just add someone who's going to make an immediate impact.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the running backs, I was like, the 2 guys that have been kind of put in the mock drafts of the first round, just tell everybody you got Bijan Robinson, we've already talked about, and then you got Jahmyr Gibbs, that's been talked about, of course, coming out of Bama. With those Bama running backs, they're very north and south. Very strong running backs. And actually, if you look at the NFL, I mean, those guys are playing right now. What's stopping a team from taking him in the first round? Do you think this guy's going to drop, or is he going to be another guy that's going to be taken early?
So I think like the over 1.5 running backs is like plus 350. Gibbs is, from everything you hear, Gibbs, like some teams are in love with him. And Jeremiah actually was on the podcast, the same one I was talking about earlier. I think they even mocked him in the first, but basically Gibbs' first round odds took a hit today, where he's like the pass catching running back that is like electric. The common comp is Kamara, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if he sneaks in. Like I wouldn't be betting the over 1.5 running backs at all, but I wouldn't be shocked if he sneaks into like the late first. So like I think the Bills are the common mock spot to him.
Yeah. All right, let's talk running back. Let's get out of the running backs here because that's kind of like boring when it comes to the first round of the draft. I want to talk about the explosive guys, where the league is going. It's route runners, it is receptions, it's RPOs, screen passes. It is everything that is airing out the ball here. And a good point here brought up by Jake Dino. who is in the chat right now.
There's no way that Gibbs is minus 300 to be the second running back taken. He has to be like minus. I think you're missing a 0, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the running back quorum here, it's very limited. You have a lot of guys that are probably going to leak into the 3rd or 4th round. I mean, the only 2 that I stuck in my mind were those 2. But let's talk. We're talking wide receivers right now. So you have, of course, you have Quentin Johnson.
Oh, he is minus 330. He used to be way higher. I mean,
wow.
Sorry.
Yeah. So going back to the wide receivers, you have Quentin Johnson, you have Zay Flowers, which I don't remember watching one BC game all year. It's like probably because I just didn't bet them because they were worthless. And then of course you have Jackson Smith and Chiba. I was like, the reason why he kind of dropped a little bit, and I think there's a little bit of value on him, is because he got hurt in week 1 and didn't really play again. Actually, I don't think he played again all season, but it doesn't take away from his value. He had a tremendous Rose Bowl the year before, kind of showed his talent altogether, but Quentin Johnston really brought up his stock value after his run here going into the national championship game in a losing effort. What do you think about the wide receivers in the 1st round, and who are the guys to look at as far as value is concerned?
So it's generally thought of as like a really weak wide receiver class, and out of those 4 you just listed, I have an over on 3 of them, which is like my assumption that they're going to slip, and I guess it's somewhat correlated, but it is generally thought that the wide receiver class is going to slip, and then like the tackles in the corners are going to go earlier, which kind of pushes them up. Which JSN's under opened at 11.5, went to 12.5 real quick, which I bet, and the knock on him is he's a slot receiver, and any of these guys in another draft class wouldn't be in the 1st round, where it's just like JSN, slot receiver, mediocre 40. He's probably the guy that everyone's going to argue that it's like the Ohio State fans, I think, that argue that like everyone is like too low on him. And then Flowers is the small, shifty guy out of BC. Quentin might not even go in the 1st anymore. And then Addison's kind of like the wild card, I guess you could say. I think he's live to go 1st. He's very trendy to go to the Chargers, where I think it was Underdog had this tweet that Addison transferred to USC because his wide receivers coach went there, who is now at the Chargers, which, like, when you want to make those connections, you can either take them at face value or they're nothing at all. But I think receiver is going to fall. I think Quentin is a coin flip at this point. Each receiver's over-under that opened has gone up. Addison's the only one that I don't have an over on, which that was a good line that they opened up at 22.5. But it's a dark horse. I think the corner class is going to push them up, and potentially the tackles as well, where right now is the time that like you start seeing guys that have been mocked in the 2nd round start to rise into the 1st round of the mock drafts, because basically just all were wrong on him. Guys like Anton out of Oklahoma, Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State, who's been my guy since day one, McDonald out of Iowa State. Those are some guys that you're seeing in like the 20s and maybe even the teens, that these new guys into the 1st round of the mock drafts that are going to push guys like the receivers who aren't like superstars up.
Right.
I think FanDuel opened 1st round odds on all 3 of those guys, and they're all plus money this morning. Last time I checked, they were like all minus 500, and they just eventually pulled them. Which FanDuel last year offered parlays on 1st round props, which I think that was like the general consensus, that everyone was a little bummed that the 1st round props weren't parlayable, which last year they didn't enable parlaying until the week of. So I'm hoping it's next week, but they would have gotten absolutely smoked if they had the parlays enabled for all of these plus money 1st round props. Like, they would have gotten destroyed. I just would have kept hitting submit until they made me stop. But
Yeah, I think it's probably something they introduced during the. I would assume like they had a lot of stuff that they kind of threw in there during the pandemic, and then they realized that like, oh, okay, now we're back to like real deal sports, and this is kind of risky. We lost some money on this one, and it's like we can't really offer this anymore. But you did bring up the corner situation. I think the corners are kind of like the guys that you see them all in a lot of mock drafts, like with at least 3, maybe even 4, popping in there in the top 10. Particularly, you've got Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State. You have Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, Christian Gonzalez from the Oregon Ducks. Joey Porter, to me, I've seen him play. I think he's a phenomenal player. Illinois' defense was phenomenal altogether. I don't know if that kind of overshadows what Witherspoon does. Christian Gonzalez is probably a guy that I don't know too much about because I not watching a lot of Pac-12 at night, going to bed. What are your thoughts on just the cornerback class for this draft?
Yeah, so Gonzalez was the favorite, I want to say, for the majority of the time. And guys like Brugler and Jeremiah, actually not Brugler, Jeremiah, who he's probably like I keep bringing him up because one, he's like the most available to like us. And he's also like used to work for a team. So he's probably the closest thing we have to like what teams are thinking. But he's had Witherspoon as like top 5 ranked player in his big board since day one. And eventually Witherspoon became the favorite. And once the Lions traded Okudah, corner became like a huge favorite for the Lions. And Witherspoon, I would say like right now it's going to go Witherspoon at 6. That's probably the consensus. And Gonzalez is trending at 8 for the Raiders, whether they trade or not, or he might even follow the top 10. Porter is a guy that is one of the more consensus mock draft picks to like Washington or Pittsburgh. He definitely has knocks where like I bet is over. He's like the press corner that isn't going to work in every system, that he's just not as versatile as the guys going ahead of him, where Banks had an amazing combine out of Maryland. I can see him going ahead of what's his name? Porter. And then you have guys like what's his name? Forbes and Ringo, where Forbes is like absolutely catapulting himself into the first round right now. Ringo probably not. Cam Smith fell, but the corners over that. The corners was 4.5, which the over was heavily juiced, and now it's 5.5. Which I still think the over 5.5 is a good bet. Like I still think that hits. Like I think we could see 6 or 7, as long as it's defensive backs. So over 5.5 defensive backs, you have Witherspoon, Gonzalez, Porter, Banks, Branch out of Alabama. Then you have like the deal breakers, Emmanuel Forbes, who's pretty much becoming almost a certainty. I wouldn't say a lock, but you got Forbes, Ringo, Cam Smith. So there's like 3 or 4 like deal breaker options at 5.5, which 4.5 was an absolute like just lock. Like that was bad line. Like that's one of the ones that I was just like laying the juice, where like minus 200 might as well be like minus infinity. But 5.5, I still think over 5.5 is a good bet. The over open up at plus money, and it's not. I think it's like minus 120, minus 130. But corners are going to make a run. Tackles are going to make a run. Wide receivers, I think, could fall. Tight end, it's very iffy. Kincaid has question marks. Mayer's just like rock solid that you know who he's going to get, but he doesn't have the upside of Kincaid. But then you have like 3 or 4 tight ends that could go in the first round in any other draft.
I want to talk about tight ends, and that was kind of the next segment here. I have personal
Notre Dame
passion for Notre Dame. Okay, there's certain positions that I know Notre Dame is always going to bring first round talent. It's offensive line and tight ends. I've seen plenty of tight ends come and go from Notre Dame. I've never seen a tight end this good come out of Notre Dame in the last 15 years. And I'll say that adamantly. He does everything that resembles Rob Gronkowski to a T. He blocks. He's as big as he is. He wears 87 on the jersey.
Which I hate comps. I cannot stand when people make comps with 2 guys that have the same number.
It has nothing to do with the number.
I know.
It has to do with the ability too. Yeah. You could say 87 is like, all right, now you're trying to play the part. Okay.
Moving forward, when you see comps moving forward and they have the same number, any other situation, I just like honestly, I just like ruined your thought process in this because it 100% goes
back in the day. When they see a white slot receiver, he's the next Wes Welker. I understand those comparisons. Those annoy me too. But when I've seen this guy play, and it's like watching Rob Gronkowski in a Notre Dame uniform to a T. I've watched every play for Notre Dame, every single snap. It's like, so I don't understand why I'm seeing mock drafts for Dalton Kincaid higher than Michael Mayer. What is the reasoning behind that? Do you think that there is a possibility that the first tight end coming off the board could be Michael Mayer? And if it isn't, they're the dumbest people on the planet.
So Kincaid was the favorite. So Mayer was the favorite. Then it flipped to Kincaid. And then Zerline went on a podcast a couple of days ago and said there were a couple of red flags on Kincaid where even though he's checked out like health, like some teams were like concerned with his weight or something like that, which then the odds flipped again, which I think is just 50-50 shot. But Mayer's just the definition of solid, but he's not like spectacular at anything. Like he's just going to do everything like good. Where Kincaid in the new age of the air raid and the passing offenses, Kincaid just offers more upside that doesn't bring the blocking, but brings a lot more to the table in terms of like after the catch, ball skills, which he's just sexier, essentially. Like the best way to put it is like Kincaid's just sexier than Mayer. I would say right now it's a legitimate 50-50 shot. Nailing the team that is going to take a tight end is the problem because it isn't considered a premium position, which figuring out what team goes tight end with those two being so close in terms of like their overall grade, but so different in terms of their styles and fits is basically what's going to decide. Where like if the Lions go tight end, Mayer just feels like a Dan Campbell type guy, which I would see Mayer going first. Yeah. Where if the Bengals are the first team to take a tight end, I see Kincaid going first. So I think it just comes down to the team.
Yeah, it seems like the Detroit Lions have gotten a lot of guys from Notre Dame. That seems like been the pattern for them. So yeah, that does make sense. Joined here by Vegas Refund, who has given some great draft analysis on this one. You can also check him out. He has a great prep sheet that he puts on his website, the vegasrefund.com. The link is in his bio on Twitter at Vegas Refund. Go check it out. It is very informative information, and it also is updated daily, I believe, or is it even hourly?
I would say up to the minute.
Up to the minute, yeah, because I was watching the thing update when I saw the sheet. It's actually informative. It's only $35, and if you're actually it's gonna pay for itself. That's all I'm trying to.
Thank you. I think that comment just got pulled up. Or like the Jets O-line is like on my sheet. You can see like percentage each team drafts a position, and Jets right now I think like 95% of like the 40 quote unquote sharp mock drafts I track have them taking an O-line. But the one thing, and I agree, but the one thing that in Jeremiah is the Jets plug. I think it's very well known. He used to work for the Eagles with Joe Douglas, who's at the Jets now. He nailed both picks last year. Or I don't know if he didn't nail the second one because that was like a trade-in, but he nailed Sauce last year. Like when he comes out with his final mock draft, just automatically scroll to his Jets pick. And he was on 2 podcasts the last 2 days, and they were basically talking about the Jets, and he inevitably went all line, but each time, like you could tell in his context that he had a strong opinion about them going D-line, which I don't know if that was like just his personal opinion or was him kind of like hinting at it. Because in his last mock draft, which is in March, he had them going Nolan Smith at 12, which there was just as heavy as a consensus then. Nolan Smith might be there at 12. Like it's probably like his over-under is literally 12.5. But 250, I wouldn't be laying 250 on Jets O-line because too many variables in a chaos draft. If anything, I just wouldn't bet into it. But like, I'd rather have like fun money on O-line just based off of like the connection that we have in Jeremiah and his context and his mock draft, which I wouldn't even bet into that market until his final mock draft next Wednesday. That's when my destroy whatever position is.
Yeah, I mean we're a week away here. Just give it a little preparation for the people. But I think probably offensive linemen are on Aaron Rodgers' wish list. He wants the protection. He's an old bastard. He's got some of his receivers that he likes to throw to. We'll see if the deal comes across where he will be wearing a Jets uniform next year or sitting out altogether. It doesn't matter. But I want to leave the people with this, and I will say again, go check him out on Twitter at Vegas Refund if you haven't checked him out already. And also all you beautiful bastards that have sat with us this whole time that have been chatting here: Benjamin, Whaley, Dane, Bob, Jacob,
Dane creeping.
Michael is always joining. He is a gun disciple. Sean Sullivan, Benjamin. I mean, it's just a bunch of beautiful crew. If you haven't subscribed to the Sports Wagering Network, do so now and hit the bell so you know when we always go live. Listen, we're going to be starting a baseball podcast here pretty soon. I'm just making sure that the data is right and everything from a production standpoint is accurate and ready to go. It'll be me, it'll be the Shark, it'll be the Dabby Cab, giving daily baseball picks. We're talking football here, so check out at Vegas Refund. I want to leave the people properly with let's go your top 4 picks for the draft. And I know you bought lines early, so they're probably gone. But what are your top?
I'll just give out a couple. Like I'll just throw a few like that are probably bettable right now. Like I think in no specific order. Like I think Tyree Wilson, first defensive player, is still bettable. I think Bills D line is bettable. I don't know what those are. Those might be gone. I think Giants O line is bettable. Kincaid first tight end at this point, bettable. I haven't checked those odds yet, but there's value. Titans going. If the Titans take a quarterback, that's like my nuke. Like that's their I'm buying an island, which I've kind of lost faith in that. But Titans going to quarterback. I think if Levis goes 2 or Tyree, or as long as Stroud doesn't go 2, it's great. But looking into in any show that I've been on, I'm probably, if you listen to them all, I'm probably a broken record this time. But team to draft position, I think, is like the most leverageable bet right now in the market because it is a weak class. The drop off is going to be greater towards the end compared to other years where teams are going to default to need because the best available player isn't going to be clear cut where you just have 30 first round grades. Like teams might just have 10 first round grades in this draft because it is weak. And figuring out team needs is going to come into play where like Bills D-line, I think that will be a team need in the future where Bengals corner, it's another good one. I think tight end's favored for them. But like finding value in team needs for the picks in like the 20s, I think could be leverageable as we go where I think like teams that have like tight end or wide receiver favored right now probably are the most leverageable to like the secondary or third odds for that team because tight end is dicey. It's not a premium position. It feels like both of them are kind of falling. Where like I think the Bengals have tight end favored, maybe the Cowboys too, or the Cowboys have some juicy ones. I haven't made a play on it, but like the Cowboys could be leverageable. But yeah, look into like position towards the end of the draft. Just like a team needs, figure out like what the team needs might be next year, not just this year, based off like contracts and stuff like that. And you can really make some money.
Yeah. And also check out the prep sheet. Vegas Refund.
I got an order. Thank you. I got an order while we were on.
There you go. So they're going to keep coming. We're going to keep promoting you. And make sure you send me your picks in the DMs so we can actually even do better promotion for you in the future here. But I want to thank Luke aka Vegas Refund, for joining me once again. We'll definitely have you back sometime in the football season. Maybe this show or maybe some Sunday show that you're not that you have an open window. I know you're very busy during that one, but that's going to do it here for DadBodds episode number 118. Is there anything else you want to plug for the people here, Luke?
No, thanks for having me.
All right, perfect. So actually, let's do this. Hold on. I know you do NBA bets, and I actually posted a couple here, and I'll give them here.
Come on, Warriors.
And I think I'm 10-2-1 in the NBA playoffs so far this season. Haven't posted them, so it doesn't count. So I'm actually 0-0 from posting perspective. But do you have an NBA play for the late show?
I'm on Warriors, and then I was on. Honestly, what I'm like picking up on right now, because I'm just dabbling with NBA props for like action, because basically like time is flat for me right now with the draft. But I took Steph Curry over threes, which was like the chalkiest prop ever, and he lost. So I'm going back to the well. But I have noticed that like last night, the teams that had the key players out, like Memphis had Ja out, they won. The Bucks had Giannis out, they destroyed him. I don't think it comes into play the same way with Kawhi. And I want to say, I guess Draymond is, I don't think he affects the line that much. And I wouldn't say it's the same angle. But like, I just couldn't bet against the Warriors in this spot. I guess coming from like an NBA expert that I am.
Right.
So Steph Curry over threes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the market on these ones, so bear with me. I'm on the Warriors as well. I think they come back from a 2-0 and going back home, even though the Kings are the best ATS team on the road. I think they're hitting at 67% as a clip. I don't think that translates in the playoffs. Different spot for a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in a while, and also I like the under in the Clippers game tonight. 225, no Kawhi, and I just can't. Usually I like taking those teams missing players off injury. I think missing Paul George and Kawhi is going to be a little bit too much here.
Westbrook's going to be chucking it. I just love
it's going to be it's basically Westbrook shooting 50 shots, and that is not a guy I can back right now.
I love when he just goes off the rails.
Off the Lakers here, but that's going to do it here for episode 118 for the DadBodds. Let's cash some tickets. Let's have ourselves a damn draft. Thank Vegas Refund for joining us again. Hopefully you'll be back soon. Let's keep dancing. And as always, bang, boom, pow. Close us out, pun. Bang.